as business owners, when we make that big decision to sell our company, the anxiety level, stress levels, start to increase and a lot of questions come into your head. And, two of those questions that are most likely at the top of the list are, what is my business worth? That's probably number one. And two is, who's going to buy my business? And what's intriguing about that question, who's going to buy my business, is that most business owners think they know who the buyers are for their business. But in reality, the majority of businesses are sold to companies that they've never heard of before. Let me repeat that. The majority of businesses are sold to companies that our clients and business owners have never heard of before. So, at Osage, we take great care and time and effort to develop a comprehensive buyer list. And on today's podcast, The Ins and Outs of Selling a Business, we're going to delve into that a little more deeply. It's important for us. I mean, the groundwork for any good deal, foundation, is having a strong buyer list. And we will literally comb the world looking for buyers for our clients. A majority North America, Canada, Europe, but we comb the world depending on the kind of deal. We have our proprietary database that we developed over 24 years. We subscribe to a number of databases that help us, identify potential buyers. And then we also use, deal networks or platforms to kind of augment, supplement our efforts to find the right buyers. And one of those platforms, Deal Network, we use extensively and have for many, many years now is called Axial. Axial is specifically developed and designed for what we call the lower middle market. In this case, companies less than $250 million of transaction value. And it helps us, give us better visibility into the buyer base. And then we could identify specific buyers on their platform that we are going to invite into our process. And like I said, I think we've been using Axial for over a decade now, and we're really happy and excited to have with us today the founder and CEO of Axial, Peter Lehrman. Peter, good morning.
Good morning, Keith. It's so great to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I was driving up here today, and I was thinking about when we first started using your platform, and I recognized it's been over a decade. And it has been a great tool. And in fact, a new buyer just popped up this morning on my way up here, said, "Hey, we want to look at this deal," right? So we'll look at them and we'll investigate is the right type of buyer. But, I just talked about Axial briefly. You're focused on low middle market. I have a lot of things I'd love to chat with you today on. But before we get into that, I'd love to give you a few minutes to talk about, you founded the company, I think back in 2009. You came up with this vision of Axial. I'd love to share with the audience, have you share with the audience a little bit about how you came up with this vision to create this company and, what Axial is today.
Well, that sounds great. Let's do it. I will try and be brief. In terms of answering the sort of the founding sort of origin story, I was working as a private equity investor at the entry level, associate level while I was in business school. I was 26, 27, 28 in the business school years. And I worked for a investment firm actually based here on the East Coast. I was working remotely for them because I was in California. And there were two things that I remember from my time with them. The first thing that I remember really vividly was meeting with a management team and feeling like the management team was outgunned in the meeting. And I remember just feeling like, wow, like this management team is just not ready to be dealing with the questions that this set of investment professionals is firing away at them.
Mm-hmm.
And And I remember that, and I just didn't really think anything of it for too long. But I just was like, wow, that's, like there's a big mismatch here between professional, sophisticated buyers and acquirers of businesses that run private equity firms or are in professional corporate development, and small and medium-sized managed, businesses that have management teams that aren't adequately prepared. They haven't been adequately prepared, or they don't have a lot of history, you know, in these kinds of settings and conversations.
Yeah, they've never done a deal
And
before, right? So
never done a deal before. Exactly. You got one side of the table's done deal after deal after deal after deal for decades, right? Other side, management team, building companies, hiring, firing, designing products, serving customers, putting out all kinds of operational fires, never ever done a deal, right? So I noticed that mismatch, and I remember that. And then the other thing that I noticed, from my time there, was I thought that while they had good relationships as a private equity firm with certain investment bankers and certain sources of deal flow, generally speaking, this is in 2006, 7, and 8, generally speaking, their level of sophistication in terms of sourcing deals and their ability to do it at scale and repeatably, and and really access all of the deal sourcing channels that are available, to buyers of small and mid-sized businesses, was mediocre at best, not
mhm.
very strong. Um, and I had spent the first 6, 7 years of my life actually working in an operating company, and I had a lot of experience from that operating company that I thought would make that I thought I could transfer to sort of solving their deal flow problems, as acquirers. And then this management team unpreparedness thing really stuck in my mind as well. And so after business school, I started Axial. Our original promise to the market of buyers was that we would help you find opportunities that were a very good fit for your criteria. And our original promise to sellers was to work with their brokers and their investment bankers to make sure that the buyer list creation process that you just mentioned in your intro, that buyer list creation process um, was really well supported, that there was a lot of good data, there were a lot of good potential buyers at the table, and that those buyers were not just like, people on a list somewhere, but they were active buyers that were definitively making, doing transactions, buying businesses. They, in other words, it wasn't just sort of like they had done a transaction and they might be a fit, but try to create like a higher signal strength there, and find buyers that were really leaning into certain kinds of businesses, or certain kinds of markets. So it was, a classic sort of founder story where I was in this industry. I'd been in it for a little while, and I was kind of scratching my own itch and sort of seeing, these challenges and opportunities, and that was kind of the spark of getting Axial out of the blocks.
Right. So today, I mean, it's a, like again, I think I joined back in 2012, maybe 2013. We spend, again, it's a very important aspect of our enhanced buyer list. It's every deal, almost every deal we launch, we will post or share with the network, right, and see what additional buyers that you bring to the table, which is, it's paramount to us to find the right buyer. It's really evolved. I mean, your initial concept and thoughts where it was, and today where it is, right? It's evolved into a platform where, folks like myself could, on a blind confidential basis, can put out, our teaser, essentially, and then you have, you're up in the cloud platform, you have algorithms that you run and say, okay, based on this, what you're looking for, here are the buyer base, right? Which helps us a lot because, and we've done podcasts in the past, and I just got a call from a client yesterday. His mailbox is full, right? I don't know how they got, from buyers calling him, hey, love to have a conversation about your business, right? And
Yeah.
like he's already engaged us. And I said to him many times, I said, George, just turn him over to us. But, this mailbox is constantly being full and we call, they're kind of fishing for deals, and they have no idea what the criteria. They look at maybe some old data, right? that, that's posted that they're maybe from 2022 when sales were 12 million, it's now 2024 or 25 going into when sales are now 20 million, right? So it creates a lot of noise that confuses the seller. And
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
why.
sellers have, owners of businesses are just constantly being sold to, right? They're being sold to by private equity buyers who are trying to buy their business. They're being sold to by, vendors that want to sell to their, they are always being bombarded by somebody who's trying to sell something to them, right? And buyers are no different, right? And I think what owners don't realize is that the way this world has gotten more and more mature, the number of buyers that are in the market that are hiring, young analysts, associates, interns, and they're just, when you get a voicemail from a corporate buyer or a private equity buyer, and they say, "Hey, I'm calling. I'd love to have a chat with you about your business. Interested in buying your company." What a lot of owners I don't think realize is that those people are they're incentivized to just make as many connected conversations as they possibly can. They
Right.
don't necessarily want to buy your business. They don't even necessarily know what the name of your business is. They have a big list of companies that is in front of them to reach out to leave voicemails with, and they're just doing their job. Like, that's the job that they were hired to do. And so I think buyers can get just the wrong, the wrong impression. Now, there's a mix of buyers that are out in the market, right? And there are some buyers who, when they pick up the phone and they call, they know who you are, they know what they're talking about, they've been tracking your business for a long time, and maybe they are very sincere and very genuine. So you have this whole mix of different behaviors and approaches and deal sourcing methods that are out in the market, and it's very confusing, very disorienting for a seller, or for an owner. And it's something that they usually need help with, figuring out who's serious and who's just kind of, dialing their way through the phone book, so to speak.
Well, yeah, well, it's an interesting point because we've talked about it a lot. Is that are you going to pick up the phone and talk to somebody that you've never heard of, that doesn't know who you are, that's going to take you on this journey that you're not even sure how you're going to get there for the most important decision in your life, or are you going to dictate the terms and conditions and how you're going to get there? And if you pick up that phone, and owners are always, they pick up those calls, right? And if you pick up that phone, it's a distraction because now it raises a whole nother unknowns in your mind, increases the stress level. You're taking your quote unquote foot off the gas of dealing with something else about your business. And it can have a negative impact on your health, for one, your business performance, for two. And if you get into a detailed dialogue, because all buyers, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, love proprietary deal flow, right? One-on-one, you and me, right? And say,
Yes.
we don't, I get calls all the time, because we run an auction, right? We run a competitive process for our clients. And why we do that is because we want them to become well-educated, informed, know what the market likes, doesn't like about you, have them present us bids so you see what the market sees the value of, and then make some decisions where, you're in a situation where the buyer is now in the catbird seat and you're not even sure who is this, what are the terms, you've never been through this before and you're uneducated and you're dealing with, you said you started right off with a highly sophisticated buyer pool that knows what they're doing. Right. And if you get into that conversation one-on-one, it will inevitably lead to them having the upper hand in negotiations. And you have no idea who else is out there unless you test the market. So, and as you said, the buyers today, like so we're in our 24th year. I can't believe it, 24 years, right? When we first started off, some of these tools out there, databases, were extremely expensive, right? Nexus, Lexus. People don't even know what those are anymore. And you it cost you $250,000 to be on the platform to utilize those systems and whatnot. Today,
Mhm.
there's literally hundreds of different research tools, databases that you can
Yes.
subscribe to that gives you all kinds of information. So back then there was only a few, what I would call maybe 1,000 PE firms back in 2001 or so, plus or minus, that really were very sophisticated in their approach. Today there's probably 5,000, and it's
Yeah.
a makeup of different kinds of buyers, right? So, to your point, your information flow, or noise, I call it, is just every day coming at you. Because what's the one reason? Because there is a ton of money sitting out there that is ready to go to work. I think the last I knew was like $1 trillion of private equity, dry powder, cash available. They need to put that money to work. So as you said, you get these young people out of college, and their first thing to do is they get on a list and start making phone calls. 24. So, I mean, and I think so. Let's just talk about how that relates to matching with Axial, right?
Yeah.
You're trying to eliminate that noise. You're trying to provide folks like me with qualified buyers. You're not 100%, but you're pretty good. I think from the normal, you do a really good job of I would say, screening the criteria that fits, right? And that allows us to kind of look at that criteria and decide whether or not, okay, it's not really a fit. Thank you, but you're not really a fit for our client. But in another case, you know what? I haven't heard of this company. I looked a little more into them and said, you know what? Let's send them a CA. Let's invite them in and see where it goes. So, maybe talk a little bit about how that kind of works internally. Obviously you don't want to give up the secret sauce, but what reactions you've got to folks like us, and how you
Yeah.
continue to improve on that and to make it a better product for folks, for bankers, investment bankers like Osage and M&A professionals.
I think that um, the thing that is really important, I think, for the sell side investment banker, and for their client to understand and always remember, is that no matter how big the databases get, no matter how good those databases get, no matter how many private equity firms the world has or doesn't have, um, the there are a lot of other things that go into determining who is the ideal set of buyers to approach regarding a certain business at a certain point in time. And there's so much that goes into that. But one of the things that really matters a lot is just whether or not the timing
Mm,
is there.
right.
So, and that is a really hard thing for a database to know, right? So you could go, selling some, 10, 20, $30 million manufacturing business, or distributor, or e-commerce business. And you go to the different databases, you look on Google, and you have an incredible list of names on paper, right? And it turns out that if you don't appreciate how those businesses are going through a downturn, they just made an acquisition and they're swamped integrating the acquisition that they just made. So they can't make another acquisition for at least another 12 months. They just had the CEO or a CFO step down. If it's a private equity firm, maybe they're in between raising their first fund and their second fund, or their third fund and their fourth fund. And so they're taking their foot off the gas briefly to focus on fundraising. There's so many things that go into determining the timing of a buyer and a seller ultimately consummating a good transaction. They may have other really good deals that they're working on.
Right.
They may just feel like, we're too busy. We've got 4 or 5 other deals that are all getting really hot and heavy. We just don't have time to focus on this. Looks like a great business, but now's not the time. So the databases will really only take you so far. What we've tried to do at Axial is not just create another database, but create a platform where the seller and the buyer and the seller's advisor can interact on a inside the platform and like actually register interest at a specific point in time. So it's not just a list of potential buyers, but it's a system to figure out whether or not some of those buyers are in fact available to focus on your deal right here and right now. So we're trying to solve not just like the matchmaking problem, but we're also trying to solve the timing problem, which I think is not as well understood or as well appreciated um, by people generally who sort of think about these things. And it's not a problem that gets solved well by databases. So you need a system by which the buyer and the seller can confidentially engage with one another in a permissioned environment,
Right.
and begin to articulate whether or not not only is the fit potentially good, like the actual merits of buying the business and selling the business, but also the timing is correct, and the chemistry between the buyer and the seller is correct. So there's just a lot that goes into it beyond just putting together a fantastic database and thinking that you're in good shape. And I think that's why you were saying at the beginning of the podcast, right? Like most of the time, people end up selling their businesses to people who they never have met before. They didn't know, because the obvious buyer or the buyer who they think is going to buy it for whatever reason, just it just doesn't work out that way.
Yeah, a couple things. I mean, it's a really valid point. Timing is everything. I mean, it just, we, um, we get between 8 and 12 bids per deal, right? When we do our auction process, and we bring in some very high level sophisticated buyers, and it's inevitably during the management presentations that one of those buyers says, look, you know what? We really like the deal, but we have another deal we're looking at the same time. They just signed a letter of intent, so we're going to take a back seat in this one. If it's available in 6 months, we'd love to come back. Right? So sellers need to be cognizant of, and we educate them that buyers are out there, not, they're pounding the pavement. So, it's not necessarily going to be, and I would say almost every deal we work on, someone drops out for two reasons. One, our client decides it's not the right fit, doesn't feel good, which is paramount to any deal, the right fit. Or two, the buyer is looking at three deals at the same time, and somebody says, I'm ready to go. We just had that happened with a buyer on our last deal, which is now under LOI, where the first buyer decided to drop out because they had another deal they thought was better, but the second buyer stepped up. Right. So we had a plan in place. The other thing is what you say, industry, right? Turnovers, cycle times. I mean, coming out of COVID, aerospace was probably one of the last companies or industries to kind of get back on its feet. I mean, getting the supply chain back up and running, airlines were, getting back up in the air. And it now is like, so the valuations of some of the deals we brought to market back then were, okay. So we said, let's pull it. Doesn't seem right. And we took a company back to markets a year later, and the valuations almost doubled, right? So you make that timing decision. It's important for us as the banker to say, look, you know what? Doesn't feel good right now. I mean, you can sell it X, but I think we should let things, matriculate through, get back on their feet, supply chain get back up, orders start coming back in. Let's go back to market in a year. Right? So it goes a two-way street, right? The buyer has a lot of things. So they're not looking just at you. You think when you're a seller, they'll focus only on you, but they're not, right? Like you said, they're looking at other things. So, I mean.
So true. Yeah. You have to capture the attention of the buyer and persuade them to focus on your business. And you have to remember they're in the business of buying companies. So they're always looking at alternatives. And so as the owner of a business working with your banker, the job is for you to figure out whose attention can you really secure and compete for. And it's not, obviously, as the owner, you think your business is everything, and to you it is. But to a buyer, it's one of many, many different options that they can spend their time on. And that's why the way you present the business and the who's the team that you're working with to present the business and the story that you're telling about the business, really matters, because they can just quickly say, thanks, but there's a more interesting story over here. That's what's going to get my attention. And and owners also have to remember that you're selling the future as much as you are the past, right? And so, to your point on aerospace, right? In a post-COVID world, aerospace and the aerospace supply chain and aviation, the visibility on the future was low,
Right.
right? Like it's hard to know, how is this going to come back on stream? Are the world's people, consumers and business, professionals, going to travel again a lot? Is everybody just going to do business over Zoom for the next, 10 years? Hard. There were periods where there was low visibility on that, right? And when the visibility on the future is especially low for all businesses or for a certain kind of business, that makes investors much more hesitant, right? They're either they're not going to participate at all, they're not going to do any deals, right? Or they're going to do deals, but they're going to need to price them and value them in a way that reflects the fact that they feel a very limited amount of visibility and certainty about the future. I mean, even guys like Warren Buffett, I mean, best investor in the world, he's been just building cash for the last 12 to 18 months, hasn't done any big deals, right? And so it's not like they don't have the money, or it's not like they do have the money a lot of the time. To your point, they had $1 trillion of dry powder on the sidelines, but still there's lots of reasons why people may decide not to do a deal with you. They either do deal with somebody else, or they are waiting, for more visibility.
Well, Peter, thanks for being with us today. Greatly appreciate your insights. Thank you, everybody, for being with us today. My name's kdee, president of Osage Advisors. If you enjoyed our podcast, The Ins and Outs of Selling a Business, feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel. To learn more about Osage Advisors, you can check out our website at osageadvisors.com. You can email me with any questions you have at kdee@osageadvisors.com, or feel free to pick up the phone and give me a call at 860-767-3273, extension 1001. Thanks again for being with us today, and have a great day.